This is a demon that can lock human organs. It resides in a haunted house near a prison, within the abandoned ventilation ducts, untouched for decades. There are 5 old and worn-out suitcases piled up. Each suitcase hides a human skull. What exactly happened in this haunted house? And who is the mysterious key demon? This is the classic horror film we're going to talk about this time. The Last Key is a prequel in the Insidious series. If you haven't watched the previous films, it doesn't affect your viewing experience. The story begins in the town of Five Keys, New Mexico, in 1953. At that time, the psychic Elise was just an underage girl. She lived in a mansion near the Deborah State Penitentiary with her parents and younger brother. On an ordinary night, Elise sat on the carpet drawing, depicting a person bound to a chair. Suddenly, the lights above flickered. Her brother shouted that someone had died in the prison again. Whenever the prison used the electric chair to execute a prisoner, the surrounding voltage became unstable. Suddenly, Elise, who was beside them, spoke up. The deceased's name was Wayne, 32 years old. He was imprisoned for committing murder with a hammer. His last meal was a ribeye steak. His final words were, "Go to hell." Elise has shown extraordinary abilities since she was young, but her parents were strongly against it. Her mother quickly led Elise upstairs, only to find a mess of toys in the room. Elise explained that she didn't do it, that a little boy had been living with them for a long time, and he intentionally made the mess. The mother patiently told Elise, "God has given you unmatched abilities, but some people are afraid of such gifts. Your father is one of them. I hope you learn to hide, not to casually display your uniqueness." She looked at the 2 children as they went to bed, then handed her son a whistle. "Just blow the whistle, and Mom will come." Late at night, Elise talked to her brother on the upper bunk, asking if he was curious about where people go after they die. The voice of her brother came from the top bunk, guessing that people go to a dark place after death. Just then, Elise's flashlight suddenly went out. She immediately pulled back the curtains to let in the light, only to find her brother sleeping on the couch. Who was the person on the top bunk just now? Elise climbed up the ladder to check, but there was no one on the bunk. However, a boy flashed by behind her. Elise approached the dark closet, asked if it was you who messed up the toys. A definite answer came from inside the cupboard. Her brother, frightened, hid behind the curtains, but he couldn't find the whistle anywhere. Elise tried to convince the boy to leave the cupboard, but he replied, "I'm not here." The next moment, a strange face appeared behind her brother. The sound of a whistle mixed with screams echoed downstairs. The father, upon hearing the noise, rushed upstairs with a stick. He asked his daughter if she saw ghosts again, and as long as Elise answered, no, they would pretend that nothing had happened. But Elise didn't want to lie, as the house was filled with ghosts everywhere. She couldn't pretend not to see them. Upon hearing her response, the father raised the stick in his hand, and he locked Elise in the basement for reflection. Eerie sounds came from the dark space, and something hidden in the darkness enticed Elise to open the iron door. Through the keyhole, the girl saw what seemed to be a prison cell behind the door. Unable to resist the temptation, Elise inserted the key, but a withered hand reached out from behind the door. Its fingers were connected to various keys, and as the iron door slowly opened, Elise's eyes turned white as if possessed. Her mother was deeply concerned about her daughter, so she went to the basement to check while her husband was sleeping. Unexpectedly, the electrical wires behind her twisted like snakes, slowly tightening around her mother's neck. By the time the father arrived at the scene, it was too late, and in front of Elise was just a brick wall. There was no iron door at all. The demon she released came from another world. The scene shifted back to 2010, and Elise dreamt of the tragedy that happened back then once again. She quickly grabbed her notebook to record the dream. Elise's friends, Kex and Tucker, were studying surveillance videos of paranormal cases. Just then, they received a phone call from someone named Drala, claiming that something supernatural happened at home, and wanted Elise to come and take a look. But the problem was that this Drala lived in Elise's childhood home, which was a mansion next to the state prison. Elise didn't want to return to that place of nightmares, so she declined Drala's invitation. In the evening, she sat on the edge of her bed, changing clothes, with scars from domestic violence still visible on her body. Although Elise wanted to ignore that phone call, she knew that if she didn't address the fear within her, she would live in unease for the rest of her life. Besides, that demon was somehow connected to her mother's death, so Elise decided to make a trip back to Five Keys town. This time, she would go alone. Before Elise could set off the next day, Kex and Tucker arrived in their newly modified truck. Although they didn't possess any superhuman abilities, they didn't want Elise to venture alone, so the 3 of them set off together for Five Keys town. Returning to their former home once again, Elise noticed that everything remained the same. Her father's sofa, her mother's kitchen. She felt as if she had never left. Due to the proximity to the prison, the house still had many lingering spirits. Elise inspected each room, but suddenly, her parents' figures darted across her vision. According to Drala's introduction, most of the paranormal activities were concentrated in Elise's former bedroom. Drala hadn't opened that room for 3 months. and there were 2 black handprints on the bedroom wall. That night, the 3 of them began to prepare. Elise equipped herself with surveillance devices. Meanwhile, Kex and Tucker monitored the situation from inside the truck. Elise quickly found the whistle her brother had lost under the bed. While she was searching for other clues, a dark figure suddenly appeared behind her. Elise instinctively turned around, but only saw her father's coat. There was a bunch of keys hanging from the pocket. Shortly after, someone approached the door. Elise immediately opened the door to check. The sound of hurried footsteps reached the first floor. She followed the sound downstairs. Meanwhile, Tucker, through the surveillance, saw 2 pairs of feet on the countertop. But when Elise turned around to get a closer look, those feet disappeared. Kex suddenly spoke up, as he saw a woman in front of him. However, Elise couldn't see the woman with her naked eye. She followed Kex's guidance and reached out her hand. Just as Elise was about to touch the female ghost, the woman suddenly appeared behind her, yelling, "Help her!" Kex and Tucker quickly rushed into the house. Elise explained that the female ghost had taken her whistle, and she had actually seen that ghost when she was 16 years old. At that time, Elise was cleaning the room with her brother, when strange noises came from the laundry room behind her. Elise went to investigate, and happened to see that female ghost. The younger brother watched as his sister spoke to the laundry room, warning her not to play tricks or act supernatural. Their voices attracted their father's attention. Elise told him that there was someone in the laundry room, but their father didn't see anything. He felt annoyed with his daughter's mumbling about spirits, and was about to teach her a lesson. However, the grown-up Elise wouldn't tolerate her father bullying her anymore. She pushed the sick man down and escaped. Since then, she never returned to Five Keys Town. It was already late today, and Elise decided to continue the investigation the next day. The next day, she took Kex and Tucker to a cafe for a meal. When Elise was a child, she often came here with her brother. At that moment, 2 girls sat down next to them. Elise inexplicably felt that she knew them, so she enthusiastically approached them, and started a conversation. The 2 sisters were named Lisa and Morgan. Their father entered the cafe a step behind. Elise saw the old man in front of her, and immediately recognized him as her brother, David. Elise was both shocked and delighted, but David held resentment towards his sister for leaving him behind. He refused to say much to Elise and left angrily. Responsible Lisa stayed behind to apologize on behalf of her father. Elise handed her the photo of the whistle taken that night, hoping Lisa could pass it on to David. As evening approached, Elise and her 2 companions prepared themselves, and put on their equipment. Prepare for a second exploration. A familiar whistle sound came from the basement. Elise and Tucker entered the basement together. They discovered that the whistle sound was coming from behind the wall. Elise said, "I'm going to ask you a few questions. 1 whistle means yes, 2 sounds means no. Are you the woman I saw last night? Are there monsters in this house trying to harm Della? Are you the monster? Do you have something you want to show me? Is the thing you want to show me behind the wall?" Elise carefully searched this wall, and indeed found a keyhole beneath the coating. She returned to the upstairs bedroom, and took the keychain from her father's coat, successfully opened the secret door in the basement. Inside, she saw a woman kneeling in the corner of the room. The whistle was thrown aside. As Elise was about to pick it up, the woman suddenly rushed forward. Before Elise could get up, the previous ghost woman pounced again, shouting, "Save her!" Elise just realized that the woman in the room was a real living person. However, she had an iron chain around her neck. Elise and Tucker tried to remove the chain. Unexpectedly, Della blocked the door with a gun, yelling, "I asked you to help me exorcise the ghost. Why do you have to go into the basement?" It turned out that Della had secretly imprisoned this woman. On the other side, Kex noticed that something was wrong in the room, and quickly took off his headphones to investigate. Della heard footsteps outside, and turned to lock the hidden door of the basement. Kex and Della started playing hide-and-seek in the house. He hid behind the door, and forcefully knocked down Della. Della, enduring the pain, got up and searched for someone. Meanwhile, clever Kex used a small mechanism to divert Della's attention, and took the opportunity to sneak up from behind and deal with him. The main characters immediately called the police, and learned that the woman locked in the basement had been missing for 4 months, and was a nurse from the nearby town. Elise looked up at the second-floor window, and saw the ghost woman still standing by the window. The next day, David brought his 2 daughters to the villa in search of the whistle, as it was a memento left by their mother. Meanwhile, Elise was being questioned at the police station. Unexpectedly, Lisa's illusion suddenly appeared in front of them, scaring Elise to take several steps back. At the same time, Lisa walked into the basement, because she heard her father's voice from inside, but there wasn't even a single figure in the dim room. Only a withered hand suddenly pushed Lisa to the ground, and then a monster crawled towards her slowly, using its bony fingers to lock Lisa's vocal cords with a key, followed by her heart. Lisa instantly fell into a state of unconsciousness. When Elise hurriedly arrived at the scene, she found Lisa chained up. They immediately called an ambulance. Morgine stepped forward to question Elise. "Why did you know that my sister was locked in the basement?" Elise explained that it was because of the demon in the house. I accidentally released it when I was a child, and it was likely that the previous owner, Della, was controlled by the demon, which led to the imprisonment of the nurse. Elise also suspected that the demon had taken Lisa's soul, and she promised her niece that they would resolve this tonight. However, Morgine suddenly said, I can also see some strange things. It turned out that Morgine inherited Elise's gift, and she wanted to stay and fight the demon together. That night, Elise instructed Kex and Morgine to search for the Bible that Della never let go of. Then she took Tucker to the basement herself, and they found a nightgown in the ventilation duct. Elise recognized that the garment belonged to the ghost woman mentioned earlier. The moment she touched the fabric of the nightgown, she saw the scene from that time. It turned out that the ghost woman had been imprisoned in the basement by her father. One day, she managed to pry open the door lock with a screwdriver, and secretly hid in the laundry room. This coincided with the mention earlier of Elise and her siblings hearing strange sounds from the laundry room. At that time, the heroine thought she saw a female ghost. When their father heard the noise, he rushed over to investigate. He clearly found the woman hiding in the dark, but he pretended not to see anything, pretending to punish Elise for pretending to be a ghost. This eventually led to the daughter running away from home. After Elise left, the father returned to the laundry room and brutally beat the woman to death.
Goodbye, Anna.
Upon learning the truth, Elise felt deep regret. She could have helped Anna, but she mistook her for a ghost. Just then the thread at the end of the nightgown was pulled. The thread extended deep into the ventilation shaft, and Tucker had to remove the fan blades. Not far from the duct, there was a suitcase. The slender Elise crawled into the duct and opened the suitcase. Inside, there were Anna's belongings from when she was alive, and her skeletal remains after death. Elise held a flashlight and continued to investigate the ventilation duct, revealing more suitcases. Just how many people had died in this small house? Elise opened the other suitcases to examine them, and each one contained the remains of a victim. As she prepared to open the largest suitcase, suddenly, an evil spirit burst out from within the suitcase. Elise was startled, her eyes turning white in fear. Immediately, she entered the spirit world. In this realm, Elise saw her younger self, and she tried to gather information from the fragmented soul. However, the withered hand suddenly gripped Elise tightly, but at the same time, Tucker dragged her unconscious physical body out of the duct. He called out for Lex to help, and they moved Elise onto the couch. They realized that she was trapped in the spirit world, but they had no way to enter and rescue her. In the end, it was Morgan who volunteered. Using her psychic abilities, she entered the spirit world, and Anna's spirit immediately appeared. Anna guided Morgan to a red door, and she placed a whistle in Morgan's palm. Then he pushed open the red door behind him. Morgan entered a narrow corridor, holding a lamp. Meanwhile, Elise's soul was trapped in a prison, and she observed the surroundings through the bars. To her surprise, she realized that this was the same place she had seen through the keyhole years ago. All the souls captured by the demons are held here. Among them is Lisa, whose heart is locked away. Just then, the cell across from Elise's lit up. The man sitting inside is her father. The door that held him captive suddenly opened. Elise looked at the familiar face before her. Memories of the painful abuse she endured resurfaced in her heart. But this time, her father turned and leaned against the wall. The key demon handed a cane to Elise. The roles of father and daughter instantly reversed. Elise raised the cane and struck her father fiercely. The demon watched this scene with immense excitement. Just as Elise started to lose her sanity, Morgan followed the sound and found the cell. She loudly intervened to stop Elise's rampage. Elise finally regained her senses, and at that moment, Elise finally realized the demon could manipulate humans like puppets. Whether it was Drala or her father, they were all under the control of the key demon. So, the abuse inflicted upon Elise in the past was not her father's intention, but rather, the demon deliberately fueled hatred in people's hearts, and fed off that negative energy. Anna, Elise, and the imprisoned nurse, their hatred towards their abusers, was the demon's favorite nourishment. Elise saw through its true nature. In anger, the demon grabbed Morgan. It paraded the souls of the two nieces, showing off its power. Elise pleaded for them to be spared. The demon then, without hesitation, stabbed towards Lisa. She, lying on the bed, began to struggle violently, and the demon slapped Morgan down with another blow. It turned and attacked Elise. Unexpectedly, her father rushed over.
I'm sorry.
The demon did not relent. It reached out and locked Elise's throat, rendering her unable to make a sound. Morgine saw this and threw the whistle over. Elise quickly picked up the cane and stabbed the demon. Then she picked up the whistle and blew it. "I will appear as long as you blow the whistle," her mother promised. This was the promise her mother made to her child, so her mother's soul appeared.
Hands off my little girl.
Her mother removed the chains from Elise's neck. She embraced her young daughter. She led the three of them towards the red door that leads to the human realm. During that time, Elise also saw a little boy. This scene is exactly like the one in Insidious, where Dalton fell in the attic. Elise realized that she had opened the wrong door. She quickly returned Lisa's soul to its place. However, it can be seen that Elise forgot to close the door. The red demon may have taken the opportunity to enter at that moment, which led to the tragedy in Insidious. At this moment, Elise bid farewell to her beloved mother. Finally, she and Morgan returned to their original positions. Elise returned the whistle to her younger brother. The siblings finally reconciled and made amends. That night, Elise had strange dreams again. She actually dreamt of the house from Insidious. The young boy Dalton suddenly fell into a coma, because they were haunted by the red demon inadvertently released by Elise. Right at that moment, Elise's phone rang. The caller was Josh's mother, Lorraine. It then seamlessly connected to Insidious. The whole plot is a perfect closed loop. The story of this film comes to an end here. The fact proves that closing the door casually is a good habit. Elise at that moment certainly couldn't imagine that she would later die at the hands of the inadvertently released demon. Elise can be considered a pivotal character in the series. This time, the director finally revealed her backstory, explaining how Elise became a medium to communicate with the spirit world, and the pain this gift brought upon her, although the horror effect is not as strong as in previous films. However, the connection to Insidious in the latter half was quite surprising. It also finally explained the true reason behind Dalton's coma. It can be considered a nostalgic work.